Okay, it is 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. As you noted when you signed in, this meeting is being recorded, and my plan is to take a look at it, do whatever edit might be needed, and then to post it on the regular FlossTube channel, technically known as YouTube. And it will be there so that you don't need any kind of a code or whatever. It'll just be, I'll set it up as a public viewing. And as long as that works for everyone, then that's what I'm planning on doing. So you need to know that. So our intent today is really twofold. We are here to remember and acknowledge the tragedy that happened exactly 20 years ago today on 9/11 and the tremendous loss of lives, not only in the World Trade Center, but on the other planes that were involved in the terrorist attack. And to use this day as a way of launching the Project America Land that we love. And some of you have not started at all. Some of you are in the process of stitching. And it doesn't really matter where you are along that continuum. There's a place for everyone. My goal is to stitch this in a year. For me, this will be the third time that I'm stitching it. And we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the game plan of how I see that working. But I wanted to start before we get into the actual stitching part, again, to acknowledge those of you that are in this group right now who lost a loved one through the 9/11 tragedy, either anyone particularly close to you or just someone you know that you know. And that's kind of the case for our family. We had a connection to part of the loss. And I think of that and think about how it affected so many people. So let's start with just a moment of silence to acknowledge not only the loss of lives, but just the attack on our country. So let's just do that for about 30 seconds. I think for all of us who were alive on 9/11, 2001, we'll always remember exactly where they were and what the circumstances were. And I think that many of you don't know this about me, but I started off my professional life as a history teacher and taught social studies of many different types and many different levels. And I really understood the parallel to the attack on Pearl Harbor once I lived through 9/11 and realized what that meant to our parents and grandparents, of that they were going through the same thing as far as remembering exactly where they were when they heard that news. And being affected by the loss of life. So there are a lot of programs out there right now online and on television about 9/11, and I think you can tune in anytime this weekend and watch any of them. So I don't really think that we'll take the time to like go over the facts of what happened when. And to use our stitching as again, a way to commemorate, a way to think about the events surrounding that day, to remember the loss of life, and to, and in the end, to celebrate this country of ours. So if that's okay with y'all, that's kind of what I was thinking that we would do. So, and that kind of brings me to one of the mysteries of this day as far as just this gathering. Some of you were kind of perplexed as to why I was asking for the source of your pattern for America Land That We Love. And the reason was one of basically vetting people. My Facebook profile is public. My YouTube channel is public. And so anyone, needleworker or not, can find this information. And I wanted to make sure that today that this gathering was made up of people who truly are needleworkers. And I felt that that was a way of vetting anyone who said that they wanted to be here. So that's one of the reasons why I asked what your source was. The other is that there are many different sources. Here's one of the earliest ones, which when you tune into my regular YouTube episode today, you will see. I don't know if any of you saw this or remember this, but this was the precursor to the Facebook group I started of cross-stitch road trip, stitching road trip. But this was published, golly, what's the date on this thing? It's in here someplace. Yeah, 1988. So this was actually the, oh my gosh, look at this picture. Forgot about that. So a very young me. Anyway, that was actually the first place that this was published. And it was also a Jan Lynn kit. It was a book published by me. It was a freebie on my first website, jeanferris.com. And now, of course, it's a PDF. So there are half a dozen different versions out there. And so when we talk about, when you have questions about it, it will always help me if I know what pattern you're working from, because the answer will be a little bit different depending on which one. So, so that kind of tells you why I was asking what your source was and why it was so important to me. While I'm thinking about it, if you have a PDF version, please make sure you're saving it someplace on your computer, either a file on your computer or a thumb drive, someplace where you have saved it. I always thought that if you bought something, a PDF in Etsy, that it would always be accessible to you, that you just needed to go to your, I see Nancy shaking her head no. One of the frustrating things is I don't get to see what consumers see. In their infinite wisdom, Etsy won't let me buy my own chart. So I don't get to see, I don't get to have the consumer experience of knowing what you guys see when you buy something. But when you download it, the best thing you can do, not just for my PDFs, but anybody's PDF, is save it somewhere on your computer in a file that you know where it is. Don't just leave it in your downloads folder. You'll end up with 1,000 things in there. Okay, so, and then that brings me to one of the other things is there are a lot of mistakes. I don't care which version you have, none of them are perfect. And so I do have a list of corrections and clarifications, and I will email that to all of you. It is accessible in the, and I will encourage you to join, if you haven't already, join the JFN SAL Facebook group so that you can show your progress, pat yourself on the back, get other people to pat you on the back, ask questions. And so at any rate, it's also a file on there. So I will acknowledge up front that there are mistakes in every version, and I've been trying to get a perfect version out there and I haven't done it yet, but if we keep working on it long enough, I will get there. So that also brings me to mind, if you do find a mistake, especially if you have the current PDF version, please do alert me. I don't care how small the mistake is. If it's like somebody recently noticed that in like 3371 is the DMC color that I use for most of the back stitching. And on one of the states, it was listed as 371. And she asked me, do you want to know if we find that kind of mistake? And the answer is yes. I don't care how small it is or how big it is. So please do let me know. And the best way to do that is through email. You know, I'm not, you know, I use Facebook Messenger just like everybody else does. But from my end, it is so hard to keep track of things that way. There's no search function. So, you know, if I get a message from Lulu Bell and I'm like thinking, okay, I know she asked me a question. If I go to my email, I can just put in her name and all of the emails that we've exchanged with each other are going to show up. I can't do that on Facebook. And also, I don't know about you guys, but I don't find Facebook to be 100% reliable. So, you know, how many times do you go looking for something and it's not there? And also to that end, please don't use the YouTube comment section either for any kind of question about this project. Email is really the best way. So Cosmo colors. I told you guys I would do a Cosmo conversion, and I apologize that life has just been really, really crazy with several deadlines that are all coming at me at the same time. But I did get the conversions done for the top banner. So those of you who want to use Cosmo and haven't figured out the colors yet, I'll just tell you what they are. The DMC 223, which is like the sort of mauve color, that is Cosmo 653. The garnet red, which is 815 on DMC, is 245 in Cosmo. And the periwinkle blue, which is the America, is 664A. And for the back stitching, the navy blue, I'm using Cosmo 168. I haven't talked a whole lot about conversion charts. I don't frankly believe in them. I think that they're highly inaccurate. When there's a perfect match, it's easy, but when you want a navy blue with just a hint of green, there's no way to figure it out other than just to actually look at the colors. And DMC colors have changed over the years. So when I'm doing this conversion, I'm comparing it to the DMC colors that were used at the time, not the colors that are out there now. So it's going to take me a little bit of time, but I will try to stay. I can't promise I'll stay ahead more than a week at a time. So once I get this part done this week, then when I start Alabama, I will figure out those colors. So I guess what I should say is those of you who want to stitch this in Cosmo, if you will email me and tell me, you know, keep me up to date with the Cosmo conversion, then I will start a mail list that's just Cosmo people, and instead of cluttering up everybody's inbox with stuff that you don't really need to know. So there's that. Okay, so where are you going to start? This is a project that doesn't, in my opinion, do well to start in the middle. You can, but I didn't set up the chart to be done that way. In fact, there's no centering chart for the whole piece. So you're kind of on your own if that's what you want to do. Excuse me a second. What I recommend you do is start in the upper left-hand corner with the border. And I'm going to do a screen share here. I put well, okay. I think, can you guys see the America thing? Elizabeth, you wave at me. Are you guys seeing America? Okay, good. Okay, so, and can you see my little arrow here thing or not? Okay, at any rate, so I'm starting up here in the upper left-hand corner with this kind of periwinkle blue. And I will most likely, actually, I guess what I could do is come back here. Yeah, so I'm going to start up here. Actually, I should stop sharing. Hold on a second. I'll figure this out. Okay, so I'm going to start up here, and I'll probably stitch a little bit of this part and then all the way down here and over, and then start my letter A. And I tend to work like my letters and my border at the same time as I'm going across. I don't do I don't do big, long, straight runs and hope that I've counted the right number. So that's how I'm planning on working this. And then Alabama fits right up in there. And each one of the states is then on the right thing. Yeah, so sorry, I'll find the right page. Yeah. So each one of the states then is 3 squares, 6 linen threads or 3 Aida squares away from each other. So that's a consistent thing throughout the design. So once I have the America part done, then I'm going to start putting my states in and know that each one of them is 3 squares down and 3 squares in, and there's 3 squares between states. So my plan is in the next 4 weeks to get the America band and the first 3 states done. And if we, at that point, if you do 1 state a week, then you'll be on target easily to get this done in a year. One other thing, and then I'm going to open this up to questions. If you want to jot this down, but I will also, actually, I think I did put it in the email. We're going to, I gave you the dates for October, November, and December. I'm making the meeting earlier. No, later. It's going to be 3 o'clock rather than noon. So that if people in Hawaii want to join us, they'll be able to do it without it being the middle of the night. So that's why I'm changing the time. And yeah, and then later in the fall, we'll work out the dates for like January, February, March, and kind of keep ahead that way. Right now, my plan is to do them all on Saturdays. And frankly, don't really have any choice but to work around my own schedule as far as when I'm in town. And by recording them, you won't ever miss a session. So, okay, so questions. And again, if you can use that raise hand function, then I'm hoping that people who raise their hand will show up on my toolbar here. What? No questions? Well, that's a quiet group. Ah, here you go. Vina. So first you'll have to unmute yourself to be heard.
Hi, Jean. Can you hear
Hey.
me? First of all, thank you very much for doing this. Can you hear me?
If you can speak up just a little bit. I don't know whether it's okay. Go ahead.
Maybe I can type my question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Are there any pitfalls to doing this on a higher count, like 40 count, or should we stick to 28 or 30 count?
It can really be done. I mean, it can be done on any count. Obviously, the finished size will be different. But there are a couple of quarter stitches, but only a few. I mean, I only used them where I really had to. Like, I keep using as an example, the horse's ears are quarter stitches, but there's no, and that's what's one of the great things about this design. It can be done on Aida or even weave or linen. So what count are you planning on using?
Well, I have 28 and 30, but I've also been thinking of 40. I'm not decided yet.
Okay. Well, of course, your 28 count is the same as if you're stitching over 2 is the same as the 14
Right.
count.
Right.
The linen that I picked out, I decided to do this. I really reached into my stash, and it's a color that's been discontinued, but it's a 30 count over 2. So when I'm finished, mine's going to be a little bit smaller than the one behind me. I think part of it depends on kind of the impact that you want to have. If you want it to be sort of poster-like, kind of like an art poster, like it is, then the bigger count. Back in the day, there were a number of people who did this on 6 count Herta. I mean, so it's huge, and did it for like schools to like hang in a lobby. But a couple of people did it that way. So, okay. Anything else I can help you with, Vina?
No, that's it. Thank you,
Okay.
Jen.
Thank you so much for being here. Okay. How about Aaron? Aaron Roy, in case we have more than one Aaron. And Vina, you'll need to unmute yourself now, and Aaron can, mute yourself. Yeah, you're fine. And Aaron.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering, have you ever done it in silk? And I know it would be expensive, but have you ever done it in silk?
I haven't. And maybe this is a good time to explain why this is the third time that I'm stitching it. The first one was done on 14 count Aida, and it's the one that appears on the cover of the original publication, which I tried to find my own copy and I can't. Anyway, it was lost in transit, and to this day, I'm not convinced it was actually lost. I think it got lost into somebody's possession, but it was sent to be photographed. I can't remember where, it doesn't really matter, and it never got back to me. And so, man, years and years and years later, I find, because it was such a massive piece for me. I don't usually stitch pieces this big. And so it wasn't until like 6 years ago, I decided I was going to stitch it again. And it took me like 4.5 years to stitch it. I started out with the idea, I'm going to do one state a week. Well, life got in the way. So I didn't do it. And so it was just a year ago that I finished the one that's behind me. And that one I'm not leaving out on my site, I don't think. But so here I am doing it again, and I'll just have to decide I've got a couple of ideas of what I will do with it when I'm done. But yeah, so each time it was done with cotton floss. The first time, like I say, on Aida, this one is 28 count linen. And I think it was just the, I can't remember which one. It's Weigert linen. And I don't recall what the color is. It's just kind of an off-white. But so are you planning on stitching it with?
Well, I would love to, but this is going to sound crazy. I'm doing this on 11 count because this is going to be like a major statement piece in my living room. And so I can't afford to do, I could do that. Yeah.
I think I count, it's like 66 colors. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I think, for me, I think there would be better pieces that I would spend the money on for silver.
yeah.
But, and I like how you call that a statement piece, and that, that is true. Again, I think sometimes it seems like, especially over the last decade, people have become so focused with stitching on finer and finer count fabrics, and they forget that when they do that, what they lose is the impact.
Right.
And it's a different type of impact. It's like it's kind of like oh wow, look how tiny that is, instead of oh wow, look at this. So, well, good for you. All right. David Lamb, how are you, David? You'll have to unmute yourself so we can hear you. There you go.
Okay, I should be. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Hello. Okay, great. Hello, Jean, and thank you again for doing this. And we all appreciate your time and commitment to the craft.
Well, thank you.
Again, about your different weigh-ins as far as, I have not chosen the fabric yet either. A lot of the tones in our home are earth tones, warm. And so a white background, an Aida white, is just going to be too bling. And yet none of us want to get a couple blocks down the road in a project and go, my time and my money, or oh, I've got to back up a little bit. So as well as keeping it within a year. So a little weigh in on, and if I go Aida, but off-white cream, which is a traditional Aida color you can get pretty much anywhere, big box as well as our craft store. Have you gotten any ideas as far as people, what is their range of colors and other input?
I don't remember the first one. I don't even think I did pure white on the first one. other than Christmas, I rarely stitch on white. I like the creamier colors, the warmer colors. And I think that as long as you don't get too dark, like there's one Zweigart color that's called antique ivory, that's anything but ivory. I mean, it's tan. I mean, it's to me way too far over here. But I think if you stay in the warm, buttery, ivory type whites, stay away from the gray tones, then I think that you would be fine. And it's to answer your question fully, where you would get into trouble would be with some of the colors that might get lost in, if you go too dark. It'd be really interesting to see if anybody wanted to stitch it like on the other extreme of like black or like one of the chalkboard colors. It'd be really interesting to see what would happen then. But like you say, this would be a big project to do that kind of an experiment with. So I don't know.
Okay, thank you so much and anybody else that wants to weigh in on the Facebook page on how they're navigating the colors would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and David, you will mute yourself and we'll see what Danielle has to say and ask her to unmute herself. Hey, there she is.
Jean. Thanks so much for doing this. I started mine to answer the gentleman's question before on 14 count ivory from one of the big box stores. It's just what it was convenient because I couldn't get to my local shop.
Yep.
And I've started it on a big scroll.
Yeah. All right.
This is way too big for me to handle. So my thought is that I'm going to stitch America and the Free States first on the scroll, and then just do it on like a Q-snap with each individual state. Yeah. Is that probably the easiest way to get around? I know you stitch in hand, and that this count Ada is just too stiff to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm an in-hand stitcher, so but I tell you, when you get toward the middle, when you're stitching in hand, that's when it gets to be kind of dicey. But yeah, once you, I mean, even the America part could be done on Q snaps. But here's one of the things that I have become aware of with Q snaps or embroidery hoops is if you're not careful, you can kind of get tunnel vision, and like you're watching this space. And everything is just fine, but what you don't realize might be off compared to whatever you're going to be doing next, and you don't know it until you've unhooked it and kind of looked at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, you'll be fine using a Q-snap or an embroidery hoop.
Okay, thanks.
All
Can't wait to get started again.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Jean.
Okay, Claudia. Claudia's busy stitching. She's got her magnifier and she's all set up, ready to go.
All right, did I unmute myself?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. The reason I chimed in is I just wanted to show that I am starting it on 40 count linen.
Okay.
And I think it's working fine.
Yeah, sure.
So if anyone is concerned about that, it is still going to be a big piece because I think it measures around 10 by 17 on 40 count.
Yeah.
So I think it'll still be enough statement for me.
Yeah. Claudia, how many strands are you stitching with?
I am actually using one strand.
Yep.
And I'm using a 28 weight Aurifil thread.
Ah,
Really
okay.
Going out of the box. It's 100% cotton. It comes on a gray spool.
Yeah.
And so it's a very fine, and I like it. So it gets a pretty heavy coverage on 40 and it's a single strand. So
Yep.
it's easy to work with.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know how it compares in price to silk or anything like that. But what I'm going to do is see if I can't simplify some of the colors.
Yep.
I don't know if that's gonna be possible. So I'm kind of buying them one color at a time.
Sure. And what I'm gonna do, I will, because one of the things I don't like about any of the versions that are out there is I don't think the photography is good enough. And that was one of the motivations behind stitching the new one, was so I could take, better photos. Guess when I did that? Like this morning. So I will email that to all of you, better photos, and that will help you, Claudia. Because I tell you, on the other end, I love stitching with a single strand. I love working with flower thread, which is made for stitching over 2 on 14 count, or 14 count Aida. And there's such a simplicity in stitching with a single strand. So I applaud you for finding the right weight of thread to go with the count fabric that you are choosing to stitch on. Because that's the trick. It's not, it makes me crazy when people say, well, can I stitch with a single strand on such and such? Well, it all depends on the stitch that you're doing. And it all depends on the look that you want. But there's a perfect thread for every fabric. Not all threads are great for all fabrics. And it's getting the right matchup. That's good. So it'll be interesting to see your progress. Claudia, are you a member of the Stitch Along Facebook group?
Yes, I am.
Good. Well, I really look forward to seeing your progress.
And I guess the other comment I should make on the color.
Okay.
It's called mushroom or light mocha. And in real life, it looks kind of like beach sand.
Oh, okay.
So a real light sand. So I'm hoping that that's going to be good to show, like, because I was thinking of like the white, because I think there's some sheep or something in it.
Yeah.
So the white will pop on here enough.
But with this design, everything's backstitched.
Okay.
So, and so it kind of goes back to what David was asking me for. I think it's less risky on this project because even the white things are backstitched. So I think you'll be okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That's where too, if you're stitching along and the color that you're stitching with doesn't work with the fabric color that you're using, change it. It's okay. It's kind of like a coloring book. You get to pick your crayons. In this case it's floss, not crayons, but please don't use crayons on your needlework. Yeah, so feel free to change the colors a little bit. All right, sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Linda Caden. Linda, you down there in Texas today?
I'm down there in Texas today.
All right.
Okay, first of all, I'm doing it on 16 count, and I dyed it myself because I wanted it to look like sort of like an ancient parchment type thing.
Good.
Yeah, so I dyed it myself. Second of all, I use these little tie things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to roll it up, and it's kind of cumbersome, but it works really well when you're trying to get rid of the excess fabric.
Yep.
Okay. All right. The other thing, my question is, I decided to stitch them in the order in which they were entered into the Union. So in other words, I started with Delaware and then went to Pennsylvania. At one point, I know that you and I had talked a long time ago, and you made the comment about, well, the border colors, that you specifically used the border colors.
Yeah, you may want to make some adjustment, Linda. And again, this is just, coming from the design aspect. But if you find yourself, for example, with 2 states side by side with the same color border, you might want to change one of them. You've got a lot of flexibility.
Okay. And then I also added the date in that they came to the Union. You have a line going under each state and the name of the state. And so I just shortened that a little bit and I put like 1787 and did it that way. So I like that. But anyway, all right, thank you. I'll look out for those colors.
Well, until you get to like your long state names like Pennsylvania, you've got plenty of space, when you've got Ohio or whatever. But yeah, and not only states side by side, but those that are above and below each other. But yeah, you've got lots of flexibility with the color border. So feel totally free to change that.
Okay.
Good. That
All right,
sounds
thank
great.
you.
Yeah, in fact, that was one of the things, I'm glad that you brought that up. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about. And other people have wanted to do something special for the states that they have lived in or live in by adding a charm or a little star or something. And that's a great idea. The states that you've been to, you know, definitely personalize this and, you know, make it your own. Okay, thanks, Linda. Okay, Louise. How are you today, Louise? Louise is unmuting herself. There you go. Stubborn button.
All I want to say is thank you so much for doing this for us. I mean, it's like our own private little workshop, and I have learned so much from you on
Oh,
your
well, thank
YouTube
you.
channels that, I mean, you have answered so many questions. It's unbelievable. So that's all I wanted to say was thank you. You're quite enjoyable to watch and
Oh,
make a lot of sense.
well, thank you so much. I do it because people like you are here and you're hungry and you want to share with each other, and that's great.
Good.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Mhm.
Okay, we have M&M, which makes me hungry for some candy coated chocolate. I don't know who MM is, but you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
There you go. I can hear you.
Okay, it's Martha for
Hey,
M&M.
Martha.
Hi, I wanted to thank you first of all for starting this stitch along. And I also kind of wanted to maybe comment on that gentleman about the white fabric.
Mhm.
You can always dye it. I actually have the Belfast 32 count linen, and when my husband bought it for me, it said cream, but it was very white. And being in the Southwest, my home is, again, very warm colors. So I just tea dyed it, and I kept looking at it till I found the shade I wanted while I was dyeing it. So that might be an option for him.
Okay, good. Good suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sure. Do be aware that when you're dyeing anything, whether tea, coffee, or whatever, it will always look darker wet than it's going to look when it dries. So, you know, you might want to go a little stronger than you think you do while you're looking at it wet. And of course, the thing is, if you let it dry and it's not dark enough, you can always dye it again. What gets chancy is trying to take the color out. So, you know, sometimes you just kind of need to do it in stages, but that's a great idea. Okay, Kathy Stern, how are you today, Kathy?
Hello, thanks again, Jean, for doing this. My question is about your color choices for borders. It's interesting that you're saying that you wanted to redo the photography, because when I look at the pictures, I'm trying to figure out, did you have some type of a pattern in your colors, or?
No, there's no pattern. I was just trying to avoid, I was trying to find colors that each time would complement what was ever going on in the state motifs, and trying to not duplicate what was to the right and left and above and below and even diagonally. Was really, but there was no real pattern. And I guess if you wanted to, I mean, you could just use the same color for all of them. I mean, you could pick a neutral. I don't know how that would turn out. I don't know. I think that's part of, yeah. Some of them, I think like New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico kind of have the same tone right across. So, I mean, there are always things that as a designer, I would go back and say, I should probably fix that or change that or whatever, but.
Was that the last thing you decided on the design, was your border?
Yeah. I tell you, the hardest thing was, and Elizabeth was part of the original research when she was, what were you, Elizabeth, about 8 years old, maybe? Let's see, that would have been.
Well, so you published the cross stitch guide in 88, which I would have been 11. So I was probably 9
Yeah, when I was actually designing
for
it.
doing the.
So here's the story. We were in Michigan, visiting my sister Faye, who has 2 girls as I do, and the 4 girls are 3 years apart. They're like little stair steps. So we went to the library, and this I'll probably get reported for child labor here. I gave them each a quarter if they could find a picture of something I was looking for. So I had a list. Meanwhile, now of course this is pre-computer, so like we're doing old-fashioned research. So first, of course, I had a list of all the states, and then listed what they were known for. Now, I have to admit, I was being very prejudicial. I did not want any kind of heavy industry. I didn't want an oil well. I didn't want tobaccos for North Carolina. I wanted it to be healthy and happy and wholesome, down home sort of images. So I will say straight out, that was my own built-in prejudice. So that was one thing. And then trying not to duplicate. I mean, there are several states that you could do seashells for. There are several states you could do fruit for. So trying to avoid duplicates. And then in terms of design, trying to not have like the tomatoes for, is that New Jersey I used tomatoes for?
Yeah, New Jersey.
Yeah, and then Pennsylvania has a red barn. So, but they weren't near each other, so that was okay. Had they been right next to each other, I would have done something else for one or the other. So there was what the state was known for, keeping it wholesome, watching the colors. The biggest challenge, of course, was, can I make whatever they're known for like this big? Each one of them is what, 24, 26 stitches across. The motif itself is like 26 stitches across or so, and only, I don't know, 15 or so high. So there are some things I would have loved to have done, but there was no way you could discern what they were in that small of an image. So all of that stuff went into together. So I take the 4 girls to the library and I tell them, if you can find me a picture of a lobster that I can use, not just any picture, but a picture of a lobster I can use, then I will give you a quarter. If you can find a picture of, whatever it was that I needed. Because I'm going to tell you some of the things, like, I mean, try drawing a lobster. What does a lobster look like? What does a lobster really look like? And can you make it this big? So that was one of the things design-wise I was really proud of. That's how I got my images. And so I sat there with my graph paper, because you didn't have an iPhone to take a picture of this stuff. You couldn't check the reference books out of the library. So I had my graph paper and my colored pencils, and they would go run off and get pictures and bring it back to me. And I would say, oh yeah, that will work. And I gave them a quarter and made my little sketch. So, and today one of the 4 is a media specialist. We used to call them librarians. So I give myself credit for Carolyn's career. So anyway, they were great.
And you were using child labor long before American Land That We Love, Mom. I remember a very warm photo session in flannel pajamas in July in a house that didn't have air conditioning.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the Christmas books.
Hey, you were a model. I mean, models you see models in bathing suits and beaches all the time, but it's 30 degrees while they're doing it. And so, and besides, just look at the training that you got. You got free training. Hey, you owe me money. So anyway, yeah. Okay.
Very good.
All right,
Thank you.
So Kathy, did that answer your question?
Yes. I was just curious as how you went about deciding the colors for the borders, because a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking of doing something for my 2 daughters. They've each lived in many different states, and do like maybe a bell pull or something of just their states, and then trying to figure out, now, how did she figure out what colors went on the border? Because some of them weren't going to work right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just play with them.
I think one of the other things too that would be fun, especially if you have, a beach house or a mountain house, or you have a lot of visitors, or whatever, is to do coasters with the states.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
just have an assortment. It's kind of fun. So,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Claudia. Making her unharness herself from her light again.
Okay, sorry to ask again, but I did not realize that each state had its own color border. I was thinking of just making them all like maybe a medium gray.
Yeah.
Do you think I could do that? Because I was gonna jump around and kind of do this. I thought maybe I'd get all the states like the borders in and then kind of go back and do them to the ones that we visited and, you know, that kind of stuff and kind of build it as I go. But I didn't realize that all the states had different colors. So I was,
They do, they're in terms of there's not, they're different colors, but they all use colors that are used elsewhere. So there's
Okay.
no, it's not like there's a color you have to get for borders that you won't be using anywhere else. At least I don't think so. But I think that you could, I don't know if I would pick a gray as a neutral for the borders. I think I would go warmer.
okay.
Maybe one of the, not, you know, talk about, you know, a word I don't like. I don't like the word tan. What is it about the word tan I don't like? It's just so blah. Anyway, other than that, I think I would go with something that's in that tan range. I'd have to really look at the colors to make a recommendation. But that, I think that would work.
Okay. I was just thinking, because now the back stitching, is that all done in the 3371?
Nope. Well,
Or
okay. None of the state borders are done in 3371. They're also done in colors that complement the state.
okay.
But they and even within the blocks, there are places where some of the back stitching is not 3371, like the flag on the paddle wheel boat is, that back stitching is in color. And like the train. Yeah, there's a few like the flags on the Massachusetts ship. Yeah, there's a couple places that the back stitching is not 3371, so just be aware of that.
Oh, okay. Because I only printed off a couple pages thinking I kind of print it as I go. Maybe I need to print off more of it, because what color are the state names in then?
Okay, so, all right, I'm glad that you asked that. So
Okay.
when you're doing, and I only printed off like the first 8 pages also. So you've got 2 pages. This is where, I'm sorry, I don't have my little camera set up. You've got 2 pages to do the America land that we love. And here I've spaced out the 4 states that fit inside that area without mentioning color. So when you're looking at this page, for example, this Alabama, Alaska, that doesn't tell you anything for color for the state names or the borders or anything. So that is just there for placement. Okay.
Mhm.
When I'm ready to do Alabama, I'm going to go to page 8. Now, again, we're talking about people who have the most recent version. And this is where you've got the detail. So like Alabama, the outside border is 502, which is that pale blue green. It's back, and then backstitch notes are right there. So it's backstitch the block with 336, the navy blue. And assume 1 strand for all backstitching unless it tells you otherwise. So the word Alabama is 2 strands, and that's the 792, the cornflower blue. And
Okay.
then like the porch floor is 221, which is a dark shell pink. The house is 3371, and the French knots, which you could also use colonial knots, is the shell pink. So when you come to doing the states, you want to pay attention to that state's information. And this is another really important distinction. And one of the things I think that this is better than the original is 66 symbols can start getting really confusing. That's when you've got a triangle that points up and a triangle that points down, and it just gets really confusing. So the symbols that I use for each state are unique to that state. So for example, again, using Alabama, the letter C is an antique violet, 3041. The letter C for another state might be an entirely different color. So I reuse the symbols for clarity's sake. So I don't have a unique symbol assigned to each color. Does that make sense? So as long as you're using each state as like a unique chart, as a unique project, you'll be fine.
Mhm.
And that's where Claudia skipping around could get confusing.
Right, and that, I'm glad you pointed that out though, because when I was looking on the America 2 pages, the 4 states all have the X's as their border. Just as a cross stitch symbol, like here.
Yes, that's just for placement.
Just placement. So that's a very good to point that out. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can see now why when you look at Alabama, the X is steel gray.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like for Alabama, so that's the door and the windows for
Right.
that
Mhm.
thing. And
Yeah.
actually, and that brings me to another thing too that I haven't pointed out. If you want to switch things around, if you live in Massachusetts and your family has been in the lobster harvesting business your whole life or whatever, your lobster man's going way back for 10 generations, and you want to put the lobster in for Massachusetts, you can, because they all fit in the same space. So you can switch symbols around. If I used horse for Kentucky, but if you live in Ohio and you raise horses, you can put the horse in Ohio.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Yeah, these are really important questions, and I'm glad that they're coming up because it will. And again, this depends on which version you have. The very first one, that was back in the day when I was using special paper and pens, and everything was done, by hand. All my symbols were drawn. In fact, one of the versions, I used both red and black symbols to make it loud. Nancy's nodding her head. That's the version you've got. Yeah, Nancy, unmute yourself there for a second, sweetie. Yeah, she's got the real McCoy. And even that booklet, I think I published that at about 5 different times. So there's 5 different versions of that out.
I have this, and I have the charts in the guidebook too, plus the PDF. I just have to find the old guidebooks. I don't know where I stashed them.
Yeah. As they say, Nancy, you're loaded for bear, huh? You're ready to go. You've covered all the bases.
Just waiting for my fabric.
Good. And the other thing too, and are any of you stitching with the Jan Lin kit? Okay, good. I hate to say that, but that one, they printed it on this huge piece of paper. And I'm going to tell you what, you fold and unfold that a couple of times and the symbols are going to disappear in the creases. And that's just a nightmare. Besides the fact that all the flosses came like in a bundle and you had to like sort them out. No, just a nightmare. Okay, Elizabeth, I'm not ignoring you. You've got your hand up. Is that because you want to say something, or you just have your hand up because you want to have your hand up?
I was going to say there was a question in the comments about
Okay.
How to dye your fabrics. I don't know if you want to get into that or.
Well, I'm thank you, and I forgot that you're monitoring my chat room, so I'll stop ignoring you and start paying you as well. Wait a minute, am I going to get paid also for all the things that I do? Yeah, that would be fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so the one thing I will say about dyeing, a couple of things I'll say about dyeing fabric is soon on my floss tube channel, I'm going to be interviewing somebody who is an expert with natural dyes. The couple bits of advice I can give you from my limited experience. First of all, pre-wash the fabric, and not just getting it wet, wash it like with Orvis soap or whatever you usually use, because you want to get the sizing out, because that will that will prohibit the dye from taking, whether you're using natural dyes or manufactured dyes, tea, coffee, whatever. Tea and coffee basically being natural dyes. Second thing is you want to dye, to get the smoothest color, you want to dye with your fabric being wet. It should already be wet when you put it in the dye bath, whether it's coffee or tea or whatever. And the other thing is just watch the color. Just be aware that it's easier to add more color than if it dries and you think that you want it to go darker, it's easier to add color than to take it out. And that's really all my wisdom. So, Joanne, you want to unmute yourself, sweetie, so we can hear what you have to say?
Hi, Jean. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have two questions. One, I'm not good with back stitching, but I have done it. My question with the back stitching, do you go one block at a time, or do you don't drag too many at a time, do you?
Excellent question. And I'm going to give you my very technical school marm type response here, because I am, yeah. Okay, backstitch is one square at a time. In my book, if a designer says backstitch, they're talking about in and out every stitch, every square on the chart. A lot of people don't realize there's backstitch and there's long stitch and there's satin stitch, and they are three different things. Backstitch, I'm going in here, out here, coming down, out this way. So the reason it's called backstitch is you're going backwards. It's sort of like, swimming the backstroke. Okay. So you're going, if I'm making my line from here to here, I'm starting in and I'm coming this way and this way. Okay. That's backstitch. Long stitch, I'm coming in here and coming out here. So for example, using this one, find it, shoot. Okay, Tennessee. There's it's actually a I just lost it.
Ohio, aren't the wagon wheels the long stitch?
Yeah, but so for Tennessee, it's a powder horn. Okay, and so the strap of the powder horn is one long stitch connected, and then at the top there's a little stitch that makes it look like it's hanging up. Okay, that's not going to look as good if you did that as backstitch. You want the long thing. And then, like Elizabeth said, the some of the wagon wheels, and I think actually the wagon wheels, I've done them both ways. But the rigging of Rhode Island, the rigging in the ship, you're going to get a totally different look if you tried to do that ship's rigging and backstitch. But I tell you what, Joanne, when you're done with American Land and Love, you will either love backstitching or you will tell yourself, I'm never doing a backstitch again, because there's a lot in it.
I know, I've noticed that.
So one bit of advice is don't put it off. When you finish, don't consider yourself finished a state until you're done with the backstitching. Because if you leave it to the end, you'll never do it.
Okay. Now, my second question is about the French knots. I am still trying to learn how to do those. And I know somebody had referred me to the colonial knots, and I still can't get it right. I'm going to keep practicing. But what I've done with other projects is I've replaced the knots with bead, like the seed beads.
Yeah.
Is that okay to do that if I just can't get this? Because they just frustrate me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. And somewhere, I don't remember what number it is, but I did show the beads, French knots, and colonial knots in one of my YouTube videos. Excuse me.
She asked me to take over while she's having a coughing fit. I don't really know what to say.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make her choke.
Yeah.
I feel so bad.
Yeah. Not you. Gosh, I don't really know what to say.
Okay, let me put my hand
The French knots, the colonial knots, and the palestrin knots are on number 38. Floss tube 38.
Floss tube 38, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, that was subtle.
Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. You did good. I kind of threw you off the end of the dock without teaching you to swim there. Okay, so thank you for whoever just added, let you know where the instructions for the types of knots are. Thank you. Was that you, Kathy? Appreciate it. Okay, Ginger. Gonna have Ginger unmute herself. No. Okay, how about Constance?
But Ginger's on.
Oh, she is? Okay, Ginger. Hello? Okay, we'll come back to Ginger. We'll go to Constance now. Constance has a pretty sample in her background there. That's a nice one.
Thank you, Jean. One thing that you helped clarify a little bit ago is, as it's the photographs on my download from Etsy, I wasn't sure that each individual square was outlined, backstitched.
Yeah.
Around the X's.
Yeah.
And because this photo, I'm looking forward to getting the better photograph, because this photograph's very dark that I got.
Yeah.
Mine. So that was a question I had. And now looking at it again after hearing you talk, I do realize that you tell us on each one what color to backstitch around the main block.
Yeah.
And would it be okay where it's appropriate, instead of backstitch, to do double running?
Okay, and that's the third, a third linear stitch that, and for those of you who don't know, a double running stitch, and I don't know, I need to. So, wait a second. I don't know how to, I've lost my own video, my own self. Where am I? Well, that's annoying. So I get, oh, there I am. Okay. So a double running stitch is more like the butterfly if you're swimming instead of the backstroke. So you're going from here this way, under, over, under, over. And then you go back and you're going over where you had gone under until you have a complete line. And so the two, to me, I can tell visually whether it's backstitch or double running stitch, just from the front. It looks different. If you like the look of the double running stitch, then yeah, go for it. Again, I think it looks different. So I'm not sure I would mix them. I think if you started outlining your blocks in double running stitch, my inclination would be to do them all that way. Good question. Anything else we can help you with, Constance? All right. Well, looking forward to seeing your pictures, and I'll get those photos sent out to everybody today. Okay, let's come back to Ginger here. Okay. Ginger, can you hear me? Okay. I think all right. I think we might have a technical disconnect there. And it is close to, it's a little bit after 1. I had kind of allocated an hour for this. I don't want to cut anybody off if anybody still has questions about how to get started. I leave on the 20th for my trip out to the West. And I will be taking this with me so that when I come back, which I'm actually coming back almost a month earlier than we planned, two legs of my 3-leg trip got canceled. So I'm actually getting home a whole lot sooner than I had planned. But I am really hoping to have America and the first 3 states done when we meet again and really stay up with this. Diane.
Hi, Jean, Diane Hafterson. I'm so happy to meet you, and I just have to thank you for doing this. I'll just make it really quick. I know we're about done. One quick question. Is there a way to soften Aida? Because it is pretty stiff.
Wash it. You know what? You know, again, this is one of those things that's changed dramatically. I just don't remember back in the 80s, Aida being, I mean, my gosh, you could do origami with Aida today. I mean, it's ridiculous how stiff it is. And I don't get,
Yeah.
I will say this, and I have just enough knowledge about fabric to be dangerous, I guess. Sometimes sizing is added to try to make the consumer think that a fabric is better quality than it actually is. It's sort of it's sort of like, I don't know. It has its purpose, but it's gotten to the point where it's overused. And there's really no reason for it being like that. I'm hoping we're not talking about major brands like Swigert. I'd be very disappointed if they got to the point where they're changing their formulas and making it overly stiff. Frankly, it's usually an indicator of a cheaper manufactured fabric that they have to add so much sizing to it to give it heft. Either that or whoever's advising them doesn't know what they're talking about, because it's terrible. But yeah.
So maybe washing it will help somewhat.
Yes. And I do be aware, first of all, if your fabric, if you can't afford to waste any fabric, in other words, if you've cut to the right size and you want to make sure that it doesn't fray, do make sure that you serge it or zigzag or something.
Yes, I have
it's okay to wash it in the washing machine. I don't really think that's necessary, but do be aware that it can also shrink. And one of the things that happens when it shrinks is the holes shrink.
Oh.
You know, when you think about it,
maybe
if it's cheaply made and they wash it and the threads close up, then the holes have closed up. That's why I think I'd be careful and just hand wash it, because it's not so much the water temperature, it's the soap to get the sizing out that you want to do.
Okay.
So you can use a detergent. Usually detergents will dissolve best in warm or hot water. So you may want to dissolve it in warm water and then add enough water to the basin until it's cooler, and then put your fabric in there and swish it around. Do be careful, don't wring it, because then you're just going to be basically putting wrinkles into it. So just put it in there and swish it. Make sure the basin's big enough for the piece of fabric and swish it around. But yeah, I am concerned that our industry has gotten to the point where there's so many people who talk about this all the time, that their fabrics are stiff.
Yeah.
I really no reason.
I bought Aida to use 14 count only because this is my first big project, and I was afraid to go to linen. So I thought, I think I would enjoy it more with an easy fabric to stitch through this first time. But it is pretty stiff, and I can live with it too. It's not that I can't, but I thought there might have been a way to.
Yeah.
But I might try washing it by hand.
When people mention this again on Facebook posts and whatnot, somebody inevitably will say, well, it will soften up as you're using it. And that is true. But you know what? It shouldn't have to be that way.
Yes, right.
It should be soft to start with. There's no reason for it to be stiff.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate.
yeah, it's a big project. Take the time to wash it and just let it air dry and see if that doesn't take care of part of it.
Okay, I will do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Okay. And Marge.
Hi, Jean.
Hey.
Thanks to you. I'm first time stitching on linen, and I do have questions about the kinds of linens that are available. I think in your initial diagram or talk to us, you mentioned a different kind of linen, and I'm having a little bit of trouble finding something that's in the shade that I might like to use. Especially since you're doing this kind of thing online, because a lot of places don't carry a lot of linens in my area.
There are, man, there are so many really great, where are you, Marge?
Well, right now we're traveling and we're in Northeast Georgia, but my home is in Florida, and I haven't had the time to research for this project yet.
And there's a lot of good shops in Florida, but oh golly, off the top of my head, I mean, I can name a dozen. The thing is, you want a store that carries a lot of linen.
That's good to know. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, Ruth Sinclair, and then we're probably going to have to call it a day here. Ruth, can you unmute yourself?
I did. Hello.
Okay. All right, there you are.
No picture for some reason on my computer today. I'm stitching on 28 count even weave Monaco.
Okay.
And I'm making a book. And I've got the pagination figured out, but in order to get the banners, America Land That We Love, I have to do it over one.
Oh.
Would you suggest 2 over 1 tent stitch or 1 over 1 cross stitch?
So that's 25 threads to the inch?
No, 28.
28. Oh, well, definitely only one. I mean, 2 would be way too much. And
but just two in a tent stitch, a half cross stitch.
Well, one of the things about doing the half cross is if you start like the letter A and you like the looks of it, fine. If not, you can always go back and make it a full cross.
Okay, I will try. I'll try it out. I'll audition it.
Well, I look forward to seeing that when you get that done. That sounds like a great idea, an ambitious idea.
See you next year.
All right, thank you, Ruth.
Okay, bye.
All right, everybody. So I know a lot of you have been listening and watching and haven't really, I hope I've caught on everybody who had something that they really wanted to say, but at any rate, thank you all for being a part of this today. And I am really looking forward to it. And I think that by doing this, I know I'm going to be held accountable to keep up with it. And maybe you'll feel that way too. That said, don't ever feel pressure to keep up with this or any stitch along. I mean, this should be fun and not, should not cause any stress whatsoever. So at any rate, but I will say thank you very much. I hope that however you spend the day today, that part of it will be spent stitching, and that you will enjoy this project and have it as a way of fostering some positive feelings about what we're all about. All right. Thanks very much. Bye. I didn't get any stitching done while we were in our meeting, but I am definitely stitching now. And I wanted to add that when I am working these long horizontal rows, this is where I find that using the Victorian stitch method is ideal. So I just want to review that with everyone. So in order to be stitching this upper left-hand corner where I wanted to start, I need to turn my fabric upside down. And then I can just stitch complete stitches. And this is why I love this for not only the main border, but this is the way I do all the borders around each one of the individual states. So with the Victorian cross stitch, you are doing complete cross stitches. So I'm going from bottom left to upper right, scooping up one Aida square or 2 linen threads if you're stitching over 2. And then completing that stitch from, the stitch is actually going from upper left to lower right. And now I'm going to scoop ahead to my next stitch. So I'm completing that stitch while I'm beginning the next one. I like the Victorian cross stitch in this kind of a situation because it's a lot more satisfying to be doing, getting a complete row done instead of doing a half crossover and then waiting till you get all the way to the other side to do the other half cross back. So anyway, I thought I would add this sort of postscript to the main meeting video. All right. Enjoy.